All right, so this is the final lecture. Last one I talked about the nature in which Israel was created and at the expense of Palestinians. Um, and so essentially you had this 1948 war, as it's known. Okay, this is considered the disaster, or al-Nakba in Arabic, for the Palestinians. This is the war for liberation, or I should say independence, for Israelis. And so it's a recent state, right? 1948 is when Israel was created. There's a book, this is an Israeli historian, called 1949, The First Israelis. And it's a really good book on kind of getting a sense of just how this would actually happen. I recommend this book. If you want to know more details about the nature of how Israel won the war and the controversies about the nature in which why Palestinians fled, or did they leave, or that whole topic about why the Arab newly created states were unable to prevent Israel from being created. There's another book called 1948, The Battle for Palestine, by Avi Shleim, another Israeli historian that I recommend, that is pretty nuanced, kind of tells both stories. I should say that in the 1980s, there was a kind of releasing of documents from Israel. And a lot of Israeli historians actually, by doing that, they're called new historians in Israel, or revisionists. They took this information that they found and realized that a lot of the stories that the Arabs told were more true than some of the Israeli founding myths. And it's a controversy even within Israel right now. And Tom Segev is actually one of those. But again, they're working with information, the documents that came after 1980s from the Israeli government. Any questions on that, please send them my way. So, essentially what we have is this. When 1948 creates the Israel, this was just Israel. West Bank went to Jordan. Egypt had Gaza. There was another war later, which we'll get into, in which Israel then wins again and takes control of the West Bank and Gaza, all that's left of Palestine. And so now when we talk about Palestine, that's what we're talking about, West Bank and Gaza. And even though technically it's illegal and it's not supposed to happen, Israel allows settlements to keep growing. What are settlements? Basically Jewish colonies that are militarized citizens who are often protected by the Israeli military, and they take over Arab homes, sometimes buying them and sometimes by gunpoint, different means. Some come there for low income reasons, others for religious reasons, to take over all of the Holy Land. And so for Palestinians, they're now having all of these settlements that are getting freeways built together and roadblocks, and it's cutting off Palestinians from each other. The settlers, again, are citizens that are often very militant. This is a Muslim woman getting attacked by a settler, and this is Israeli military not doing much about it. This is typical. You see that in the video, one of the videos I showed, right? Of some of these men, maybe from New York, maybe from Moldova. They come and they live in the West Bank. They carry guns and they get protection from the Israelis military. And then there's this security fence, as it's called, or the wall. It doesn't separate. This was supposed to keep the suicide bombers out of Israel, but instead of putting the wall between West Bank and Israel, it's cookie cutting through all the settlements. Basically, it's making Palestine an unlivable place for Palestinians. So imagine if you are Palestinian, you live here, and your school is over here. Well, now there's this security fence, you're blocked off. You may even have a home here, and your property, your farm is over here. Whoosh! They put the fence, this wall. And it's very controversial right now, especially of the nature because they essentially, if it would have just been put on the territory to separate West Bank and Israel, maybe it could have been argued as just a security wall, but it's actually consolidating all the land that more land that's being taken away from Palestinians in West Bank, and it remains controversial. This is the situation we're at. We're at a deadlock as we speak now. The settlements keep growing every day. They always have ever since the peace settlement. They were always growing. Even under Yasser Arafat and Ehud Barak, when Arafat was being told, we heard that he was being offered a lot of concessions by Israel. From Yitzhak Rabin to all of them, settlements kept growing during the peace talks, meaning more land being taken while there's a negotiation of trading land for peace. Currently, there's no Palestine. As a country, it's a territory, and there's a lot of complicated things in between that. I hope that this idea gives you a little bit of a taste of what's been going on in the conflict. I hope you'll read it more. You might disagree with some of the points I've said. That's fine. Please go ahead and just look up sources. Just become educated on it, and you're going to take your own side on it, I'm sure, regardless. But anyways, I hope this was a nuanced lecture, and we'll end it there. Salam shalom.